Hi folks, I'm David. I work here in the Centre for Creative Technologies, and you're all very welcome to the last masterclass of this semester. And we're delighted to welcome Conor and John, who are going to talk about their project Funeral for Ashes.
Okay. So odds are, I don't know, just in case anybody hasn't actually seen the project in this year, just out of general interest, we're going to play some video showing some kind of moments from it, and then get cracking. Turn this bad boy down. So get a sense of how the project kind of went in general.
Funeral for Ashes. It's not a normal list.
Mindset that was opposed here after colonialism, centered from culture and worship these trees as people.
Around the world, the ash tree was it had the same rights as a human being. These are our people. These are our trees. That's our history.
All of this is being real-time generated as audio, so people are coming in and out for the past few days. They haven't seen the same thing twice. They haven't heard the same thing twice. It's kind of alive. It's breathing.
It's tuned to the frequency 432, which is generally associated with the tree well-being. Usually, you'll get a sense of it in here, I hope.
So John Conneely wrote a generative soundscape, which is what you're listening to. That was kind of the score. So I had to work on the visuals a little bit. I've revamped them and redid them based on maybe the pacing of the music. So it's informed from the music of the same.
We can indicate the fact that it's really good.
This piece is essentially a tribute, to the forests. It's a tribute. It is a funeral for ashes, and it is a call to action that we return to a mindset that we once had in this place, in this land, where we kind of treated our woodlands with reverence, and with respect, and love. Okay, so we're going to quickly tinker with the Zoom for a second, guys, and then jump right in. 1 million tabs.
This is absolutely what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Take notes now, everybody. You're all going to do this.
I can see the audio coming in here. All right, Jen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Dave. Yeah.
Maybe even just sharing.
Damn. Yeah, I can see that we're getting. Yep.
Yeah. Have they muted us?
Yes. Are we? We're not muted, Jim.
Surely not.
The joys. No, that's it there.
Yeah.
We may have to forgo, I guess. I don't know the online bits. Yeah.
Just keep going.
Okay. So this is by no means like a TouchDesigner class. It's more just kind of the idea here is to explain who we are, and why we did this project, and then how it was achieved. We'll do a Q&A, and obviously feel free to ask questions throughout if anything jumps up that we might forget. Sure. So I'm Conor Maloney. I'm an audiovisual artist. John can introduce John himself.
Yes, I'm doing the music behind it.
Yeah. Obviously, the piece is called Funeral for Ashes. We are going to get into the actual project file, but first, really fun PowerPoint presentations, which I know that's what we're all really here for, Do this. Okay, so yeah, just quickly run through this. Why did we do this? What is it? Funeral for Ashes. So why ash trees in the first place? Obviously, the piece is comprised of a lot of scans, like 3D scans of ash trees taken around Galway and in Clare. Ash trees are, as you may know, suffering from a potential mass extinction event, really, due to the mismanagement of the Irish woodlands. So kind of a sad situation, really. We've got the lowest forest coverage in all of Europe by a huge margin as it is, at 11%, and only like 1.5% of that is native trees. The rest is like a sitka spruce monoculture. So, long story short, we have, a for-profit logging company managing the woodlands, planting huge kind of tree plantations that acidify the soil, acidify the rivers. And if you were to cut down a sitka spruce tree farm now or tomorrow, within 10 years, there's still a chance that you wouldn't be able to plant a native forest there due to the acidification of the soil. So, excuse me, pretty rough situation. Whereas in Europe, like a lot of Western Europe, the average native tree coverage would be around 30%. So huge difference. So that just really stood out to us. That kind of grabbed our attention, and it's something that we wanted to bring attention to. Obviously, the piece is called Funeral for Ashes. It's not necessarily 100% morose, like a giant downer. It is a funeral. There is a bit of
Irish funeral.
It's an Irish funeral, exactly. Yes, yeah. So there's grieving to be had, and there's celebration to be had as well, and healing. So we wanted, I guess, to draw attention first of all to the situation, and also, of course, just to create something that that was beautiful and interactive and immersive, which we've done. We'll explain how in due time. Excuse me. So try that again. So it's an airborne fungal disease that kind of informed the visual style. You're going to see that we're using point clouds, which are 3D models represented as points on a kind of an XYZ axis, so representing fungal spores. And as I said in that little video, we had initially started scanning trees, and it wasn't really until John had made a generative soundscape that he'll get into himself later that really informed pacing. That's kind of that's the score for the whole piece. So it's very much two different kind of media combined. We'll keep on sliding over here. I think I've actually basically talked about all this already. It's a space for reverence, wake-like gathering, as John said. There is a sense of ritual through movement and sound and repetition, and that does kind of get into why it's generative. There were one or two people asking how we filmed it or whether it was footage. And then over the course of the 2-week installation, people noticed that they had been in several times, and it looked different every time, and it sounded different each time. And that's because it is generative. So the notes in the audio soundscape are actually moving the positioning of the trees at different angles. And then the music itself is generative. So it's always, like it will never sound the same twice, so the same twice throughout the entire piece. So it's alive, it's breathing. We are participants in this space. That was an attempt to try and bring people kind of closer, I guess, to this biome and get a further sense of appreciation for it. This is just a picture of me and John in the woods. This is, I think, me on the phone and John sneakily taking a photograph of me with the drone.
With the drone?
Yes, on a little break.
There's a lot of that.
There is, yeah.
Footage of us looking at our hands.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So it was a great process. A lot of what we did, spent months and months just in the woods, mostly in Galway and Clare. We were filming some footage. We ended up mostly using 3D scans. So we both just scanned trees, we scanned some other kind of biomes in general, and rendered them together. We used Agisoft Metashape and 3D Zephyr mostly for the this is called photogrammetry scanning. So if you have a tree, let's say pretend this is a tree, not a little camera on a stick. If you get a drone, go around in a circle, maybe take about 60 photographs in a concentric ring at different levels. You have it then from every angle, and you can just kind of compile them in this software to make a 3D model. Fairly straightforward once you don't crash the drone, which I did several times. John made the mistake of wearing shorts and shredded his knees. Whose fault is that?
I recall I crashed the first time, the very first time you took the drone out.
Oh, well, it was my first day.
I crashed it in a forest that we couldn't get into.
Briars, yeah.
Full of brambles.
Yeah.
And as you can see, I'm wearing my shorts.
Yes, yeah. I was wearing this.
Blood,
so I was
sweat,
fine. Yeah.
And it was meters away, and I was like, "Have you done this before?" He's like,
"Yeah." Yeah.
So,
totally, man. Yeah. So I think we've gotten into this as well. So that drone surveys and woodland mapping are, I think, overly complex way of saying. John and I went to the woods. We walked around the woods, but we looked for ash trees, and we took photographs with drones. Captured Irish ash trees. With the DJI mini drone, and did photogrammetry scans. As I said, we processed them. So these are the two softwares that we used. There's not a huge difference. I just wanted to try them both. They were more or less around the same speed and cost. You can get a free trial for Metashape if you are interested in trying this out. You can also do this with a phone with smaller objects. If you're interested in just trying photogrammetry, take 50 photographs of an object in your house, and you can use a free trial with Metashape to get a model. There was some more kind of fiddling around then afterwards. If the point cloud was too large, which in some cases we took like an entire biome, like many, ash tree saplings and their surrounding kind of trees that have a kind of obviously they would all be interacting with each other, helping each other out essentially under the soil. So we wanted to kind of capture not just ash trees, but their surrounding woodlands. So that's huge. It's a huge file. In many cases, I would need to use Cloud Compare, which is free, just to reduce the number of points from like 20 million to something that wouldn't fry the computer like maybe 1 million. And then the exporting process, put it in Blender, maybe crop out some of the parts that we didn't want. Tell the computer which way is up and down. You can, we're not going to get too in the weeds here, but you can just sort of look up how to geographically position and export a point cloud from Blender. Again, if you're trying to do this yourself, not that hard, a little bit kind of some experimenting to do. And then the funner part, animating with reactivity in TouchDesigner. So importing the image as a point cloud to TouchDesigner, rendering and experimenting. So this is kind of the bulk of what we were doing, I guess, between the music and the visuals. What parameters can be changed to achieve what effect? As I said, like by no means expert in scanning woods and making them reactive to movement. So there's a lot of experimenting to be done here. But essentially, yeah, we just sort of played around with how to involve people in this piece. We already had sort of point clouds that are moving around on the screen. As you saw in the video, we had for the installation itself, I think 4.5 meters high walls that were about 8 meters long, and then obviously the floor. So projectors on each wall and the floor. It's a very large surface area. Lots of cameras. We had 5 Orbeck femtovolt cameras. We have 1 here.
Lots of cables.
Lots and lots of cables. Lots of very long cables. Lots of shouting at John through the wall, throwing cables through the wall. That was the wrong cable, etc. Now the roof's flooded.
It was
so on.
very little frustration in the shouting, I have to add.
Yes, yeah, just involved, just to
yeah. We hated
it. Yeah, it was just more the case that we're like 30 feet away and someone's on a scissors lift being like, this is the wrong cable. And then using music and sensor input to bring the piece to life. So which we'll demonstrate pretty shortly. This is like going to be the end of this. So again, to show a little video example of, I think I should get this opened up here somewhere. This is a rough example of the process of doing this. It's under one of these tabs. I'm just going to start, this one. So this is just, scanning trees. You're going to very, very briefly see, it's not going to be very educational necessarily, the Agisoft Metashape process, but these are the concentric rings of photographs. I think there is a drone crashing here somewhere. More or less edited out. So going through the woods, that's Barnett. This is 3ds Zephyr actually. That's the photogrammetry process. Here we are in TouchDesigner. We'll show this at not to 100x speed in real life now in a moment. And just editing, making it animated. Some of these trees actually didn't make it into the pieces, just kind of in general the process of grabbing a woodlands model and experimenting with it. That's maybe just kind of devolves into messing with a theremin sensor, which is also not used. So we'll stop it there. I think it's more or less how it worked. So I think we can jump into the project file. Now we do have this presentation on Bitwig and Touch. Shall we touch first or?
Sure. Okay. Are you guys familiar with TouchDesigner? Not at all, or some of you maybe a little bit. I'm not seeing a huge amount of head movement out there, guys. My telepathy is running a bit low today, so any sort of physical movement I interpret as okay. So thank you very much. Thank you. That's a negative.
Okay, that's good to know. We weren't too sure. Do we want to like?
Super clear.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hear voices. I'm not sure if it's you guys or just me.
That's informative. So we're not too sure. Shall we get stuck into Touch or just do an overview? So we'll do.
Well, there's a tendency to sort of it's a slippery slope because. Fundamentally, what myself and my friend did is wander into the forest and then try to recreate that general vibe in a 6x8 foot room in the Printworks during the arts festival. So we kind of managed to do that. So this is Bitwig. Bitwig is a DAW, a digital audio workstation created by the engineers that developed Ableton. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Ableton, but it's an industry standard for electronic dance music or sort of movie soundtracks or anything. So. But it's expensive and it's bulky. It's full of what I call bloatware. Bitwig is just a way more sort of technically or at least bloatware wise scaled down, but it allows you to do a whole lot more and record conventional audio. So there's this thing down here. This is an instrument that's included on the software. It's called the Polygrid. You can click into it. Yeah, there it is. Just maximize the window of Bitwig.
Yes. Okay.
Up, further up. There we go. Keep going. Okay, now so we should be able to zoom out there a little bit. Can we grab that zoom out? Grandpa?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the Polygrid in here. This bad boy. So these are all just modulating switches and tone generators that are connected to each other. We used the motion kind of capture capabilities that exist inside of Touch using these Orbeck depth cameras to, that's what we use to sort of trigger an influence, okay? the whole idea behind this, so this is all pitched down to 432 hertz as well. Okay, so normally A major is 440. Back in the day, 432 was considered to be the natural sort of resonance of Earth and all things organic. And I personally have absolutely, if I listen to it on headphones, you can go onto YouTube, you can find 432 tone, and you can listen to it for 5 or 6 minutes. And you can, personally anyway, I have felt calmer. Okay, so it seemed like a good idea to try to utilize 422 in order to be able to achieve the same sense of calm that we would experience when we were wandering kind of around the forest. Okay, so you don't want to get in and necessarily hear that, tension that comes from the buzzing of computers, and there was a lot of noise, like we had dehumidifiers in there, and it was, we were struggling to kind of see would it work, but I think that it did. I think that the 432 hertz definitely contributed to the overall mood, and as Conor said, I mean, it's different. It's different every time you go in because the movement was triggering different tones inside, tone switches inside of the polygrid. So it's not happening, there isn't any algorithm, there isn't any system in place that will determine chronologically, how these things are. It's whenever you pass through a field, something else switches randomly. So in that respect, that's I think what you mean when you say it was alive and it was breathing. I keep telling people we had a girl who was about 6 years old. Her mom, for the first 5 days, brought her in every morning when we opened up at this child's request, and she ran around the room for 2 hours, and then her mom took her to town. That happened 5 days in a row. So I've never seen that before. You see this kid, children are fantastic because they are 100% honest. They have no filter. So if they like it, they love it, and if they don't, they will tell you. So we got through it, without issue. Bitwig, the beauty of it, Bitwig is kind of like Lego or Meccano, for those of you who are old enough to remember what Meccano is. And it speaks to TouchDesigner. This is a relatively new feature, I guess. But Bitwig will speak to TouchDesigner through OSC, I believe.
Yeah. OSC, so Open Signal Control
protocol.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, and that's how Conor then is able to match up. There's a pop open
Bitwig a native integration with Bitwig and TouchDesigner. So I think this is going to put some sort of open here. Also worth noting, I was chatting to a lady who was sitting down there for a few hours on the third last day, I think. She said she was staying there because it cured her headache. The audio just was kind of very soothing, so definitely a healing quality to it.
Well, it's worth an experiment.
Yeah.
Like everybody has YouTube. 432 hertz. It's all over the place. They've remixed Pink Floyd at 432. You can listen to anything. But if you go for kind of the tonality, just tonal kind of stuff in there, it's quite amazing. You will.
What's the name of
Bitwig. Bitwig. B-I-T. Yeah, Bitwig. So I'm a proud subscriber to Bitwig since Bitwig 1.3, I think. So they're up to Bitwig 6 now, and I think it's going to become massive, which is a shame. It's like all of you. Yeah, you know what happens. It's kind of like I was the first electric picnic I went to, had 13,000 people at it. I'll never go again. So yeah, so we have. Okay, yeah. So you can see we have, for example, integration here. So we can see activity on the audio envelope here. So we can take this activity and we can track that to some sort of a modulator inside, or anything really inside in TouchDesigner. And you can do that with everything that's listed here. So it is very, how do you say, user friendly if you're willing to spend a few months getting your hands dirty. It takes a lot of time. This is the one thing I would say to you, that if you're going to spend if you want to try to achieve anything significant using either of these softwares, you have to kind of spend a lot of time. You've got to spend a few months actually doing it and getting into the nitty and gritty. But once you do, I think you can achieve pretty amazing things.
So the original sound, the source isn't from recording.
No,
it's
from the software. Yeah, it's just from the software. So there are recordings, or there are live recordings of water and bird song in there as well, that are pitched down to 432, and they just kind of appear. Originally, I think we had hoped to get one of the cameras to kind of trigger, or one of the sensors movement to kind of trigger the volume envelope. So the closer you would get, the louder it would get. But to be honest with you, I kept telling everybody while we were doing this, we were building the plane while we were flying it. Okay, so we were dealing with, the third day we opened, I think Wednesday, if anybody remembers, it was a biblical flood. So they shut the whole place down. I had video footage where we were collecting wheelie bins of water, and we had 70 grand's worth of electronic equipment less than 2 meters away from this. So, anxiety was real,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of Foley noise that we have in the background. Yes.
So these days it's actually made as Ableton, that you can connect to Designer to Ableton using the kind of pre-established.
That's right.
Or did you make this expressly to communicate with?
It's included in the
There's a like here so this is TouchDesigner, the visual and kind of interactive software for the whole thing. So there's one integration for Ableton and there's one for Bitwig. And there are, with other DAWs, you could use just an OSC operator and more rudimentarily communicate with really kind of any other software. You could hook it to your phone and control it from your phone if your phone can receive OSC. But Bitwig and Ableton they have their own operators, and it's just a bit more precise.
Yeah, well, it just works once you have them configured in the two. So like we were running 2 base stations, so we had a computer for the walls, and we had another machine for the floor. So the floor then, you would need the integration, the hardwired integration, if you like, is more useful, because every time if we're sort of ad hocing it, every link in the chain brings with it the potential for about 100 problems or redundancies that are going to occur, So when Bitwig kind of roll out this just means that all of the coding in the back end it's hardwired in, makes our job really, really easy.
Yeah.
But you can, I mean, like the beauty of it is TouchDesigner will track any input that you give it, any input at all, So.
So interesting. The difference between Ableton and Bitwig.
The difference between Ableton and Bitwig is about 500 euros. Ableton comes at about 4.3 gigabytes installed. Bitwig is 500 megabyte installed. The bulk of the size of that gigabyte size Ableton is in security and anti-cracking, so which is fine. If you're, I don't know any DJs. Carl Cox, if you're somebody who plays, a lot of EDM, Ableton is probably great. But if you like to get your hands I like Lego. I like the back end. I don't like Max, for example, because it doesn't allow me to do anything. You just do what the machine says, whereas I prefer to get into the back end and be able to, I don't know, mess around and make it do the things that I want to do. Bitwig allows you to do that. But it is the team of engineers that created Ableton, met a multi-million-dollar company, sold it to whoever, Apple, Sony, whatever big conglomeration, and they're now, it is probably the industry standard for all of that. But the core of the engineers, they then went and invented Bitwig, Bitwig is essentially Ableton with a DAW. That's basically what it is. A DAW as in a conventional recording studio.
It doesn't really have anything like this. If you kind of built a modular synthesizer, really, am I right in saying that in the grid here, like
For Ableton? No, Ableton doesn't have anything.
Yeah. No. Usually you would have like a left to right kind of be programming in MIDI notes to make music. Ableton can be generative, but John has made a spaceship in here basically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's a whole other 2-day discussion on how to operate the polygrid. But you can download, we're running a free version of, or what do you call it, a demo version. You get 30 days free of the full suite of Bitwig. Yeah. Comes with all of the instruments, everything, orchestras, voices, it's quite remarkable for what you pay for it.
Yeah.
And we're not getting sponsored by them.
I just think they're neat,
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah,
they're great.
Yeah. So yes, as John said, we're taking the audio envelope, I think just from the bass frequency up here. I think we showed that earlier, the audio envelope. Yeah. And then here we have, if I'm right in saying this, John, there are random notes playing that are quantized to a scale, so it's kind of concordant rather than
rather than just around.
Yeah. So these are changes in the notes, just the different sequences, and these could be at different speeds. Sometimes there were days when I just heard brand new sound, and asked John if he'd programmed something new, and he's like, nope, it's just decided to make a new sound today, Yeah.
Kind of cool. Yeah. A little bit. But I mean, it's all as well under the color of the world of AI we live in now, So at one point we went in, when we shut the whole installation down, the place closed, there was nobody in there, and myself and Conor went in and we just sat with this thing, and I swear to God, it felt like turning off the lights for a machine. That's a fact. After 2 weeks of seeing this and experiencing, it was different every time. So yeah, it's a dose.
Yeah. So we'll just kind of run, I guess, left to right. very quickly, this is just the timing for the whole network. So yeah, it's just basically switching between different scenes. The scenes are mostly trees. You'll be shocked to learn. So here are a few different, these are the point cloud models that we talked about. So obviously this is being animated, but if we have a little look at this, this is a point file in operator. I guess we don't need to get too technical with all this stuff. We can show what it looks like. That's the static image of, yeah, a glade, I guess, in Merlin Woods, rendered as a 3D point cloud. You can render these as just a blocky 3D model. As I said, we kind of preferred the point cloud. It's kind of wispy and sort of ethereal and see-through. Looks pretty dreamlike, and it has the benefit of we can explode it. Yeah, exactly. So we can explode this. I think I've got this camera set up. We had, as I said, I had 5 of these. But if you move your hand up, these are the point clouds receiving the movement of a hand. So this camera is a time of flight laser camera. It can track skeleton movement basically. So it's detecting this person standing here. This person's left hand is at 0 here, and now it's at 1, more or less. So it's kind of moves it around, and
we've designated the left hand as the sort of operator.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's about it. Yeah. It's worth noting that again with the kind of flying the plane, or building the plane as we fly it, that it works differently with different numbers of people on the floor. So anybody making their own art installation with these kind of cameras, that's a consideration to have. Like if you have let's say 5 cameras tracking 5 people, that's how many inputs you have. If you have maybe 20 people on the floor, they're going to be kind of making unpredictable movements. So there's a lot of chopping and changing to make it interactive without going totally haywire when it's a full house, basically. So we'll run through. I think maybe let's say this one, if I remember correctly, has this little system here as well. This is, as I said, just the notes coming in from Bitwig, selecting a different value for the camera angle. So obviously that's always going to be slightly different. So that every time the note changes, it just very slightly shifts the tree around. That's happening with most of them. It's they're either being moved with this kind of a system, or they're being moved by people themselves moving through the space. We have a leaf particle system here. I guess I can just press this. That's just these are pictures of ash trees. I'm sure this camera, yeah, there's a camera is cameraing. So this is, this is a stretched out image because let's say this is the center wall. These are the 2 side walls, which kind of folded around the whole room. This in TouchDesigner, this is a really common operator called particles GPU. I'm kind of layering 2 of them here. So it's a system where there are just 1 instance of an ash leaf being sent through sort of melty feedback effects, and again being controlled by movement. So 1 person in our case on the back wall of the installation could sort of Tai Chi conduct the leaves around, doing this sort of makes them explode outwards as well. So that's 1 example of the interactivity. We can maybe show what the camera is doing quickly as well, just the values. It's actually nuts and complete overkill, really, the software, I think it lives here. So this is the camera right there. So that's the point cloud footage. So depth rather. And then this is what it receives. So it's too many things, but a clavicle, for example, if you really wanted to, you could have somebody's clavicle
map out.
Yes, yeah. And you can select quite a number of people. So we've got 1 on this camera. You can go all the way up to 6 on each camera. Pretty intensive on CPU. But again, if like depending on your use case, you might want to have lots of people doing this. As an example, you could have people raising their hands to open audio filters or play musical notes, which as John kind of touched on, we did tinker with having people controlling the audio. I just found that the audio was really nice, and whatever I did, just for the sake of having that interactivity, made it sound worse. Let alone have the reverse happen where the audio is dictating what the visuals look like and not the reverse. So that's, again, this is a stripped down version. We had a lot more sensors. This is just the 1 camera. Left hand and right hand are selected here. You can see these values move when someone's in front of the camera. So we'll keep on strolling through the network. We have all of the different assets here, as I said. That's just the switching kind of mechanism. Some of this is, as I said, turned off because it's more to do with having a lot of different sensors and the projectors and stuff, you know.
There is a big case to be made for optimizing the network.
There certainly is, yeah,
So-
yeah. As I said, we have to use two different, or as you said, two different PCs just to get it to run, you know. There is a fluid sim for the floor here. This is actually largely built from a tutorial by David Simon. This is called GLSL programming, like programming languages I'm not fluent in, you know. But it's just so that the floor component was comprised of a number of layers, and this is one of them. So this is also reactive. It's tracking the head movement of one person, so it's me wiggling it around. So we had a camera attached to the roof, top-down view tracking the movement of people walking around. It would track their head, and then moving through the space just kind of like disrupts this kind of oil slick sort of feel. And then that's just one of the layers on the floor. You can see in the previs here. I get also going to go too out of order. I recommend, you know, always building a previs room. This is just in TouchDesigner. A surface operator, it just means like a piece of physical material to so this is all perfectly to scale to the printworks where we had our show. That's I think a 6-meter wall in the back and then 8 and 8, and they're all 4.5 high. So this is just really handy for testing stuff. You know, you can also go as far as to set up mock projectors that will behave like a projector would in real life with different lighting effects and shadows and stuff.
Which is highly recommended.
Highly recommended, yes, yeah, you can. Not as necessary for this piece, just because it's you know, it's all kind of nearly equidistant walls with right angles. But if you're mapping on something where you have objects in a room, and shadows are in play, then you can actually simulate how that would look in real life in TouchDesigner before you spend, you know, a ton of money on projectors and stuff, you know. So you can see here the floor. Obviously, that's the kind of the oil slick liquid effect. It's also mirroring the back wall just to get that kind of sense of cohesion and you know, just to, I guess, trip people out. Like it kind of feels like you're standing in a void of sort of abstracted woodland shenanigans.
Well, there were 2 layers on the floor,
yeah.
So you could get a sense that you know, parallax. So there was this still image on the top, and it looked like, you know, water kind of flowing underneath it. And we had people who walked into the room and were hesitant to put their foot on the floor because they weren't sure. Some guy said to me, he asked me if we had embedded LEDs in the floor. I was like, hey, what do you think the budget?
Not millionaires.
But it's funny, yeah. It's really easy to trick your senses, you know, really easy to trick your visual and kind of aural senses. So we were sort of playing on that as well. Conor and I had many late night conversations with regards to brightness and darkness levels in the room. So we wanted to make the room 100% just inky blackness when the light was turned off, so that your retina takes a while. I'm sure you've seen it before, you know, things get burned onto your retina. So you can actually utilize this in the room as a little byproduct effect, you know, so it just makes it how do you say, a little less technically heavy, you know what I mean, when we can exploit the nature of biology to sort of bring these effects to the fore.
I guess worth quickly noting as well, in case anyone's curious to this, you can just get this is a MIDI controller. You can get any such device really and just kind of manually program in the sliders to do something like this. So that's also very handy if you are working on a big project and you don't want to have to kind of like use a mouse to control every single little piece. Also kind of quickly, just, you know, in case anybody's curious what's going on here, obviously we have the different tree assets floating around in the background. They're being moved by the music or by just by LFOs, just kind of like up-down signals that are animating them. There is also this kind of white particle system that kind of looks like sometimes like rain or a waterfall or like clouds. That's just another layer. I'll show you that in a second. And it's just kind of moving, separately as a different layer. And then the audio is also controlling, as John just said, the brightness, or like this kind of bloom effect. Sometimes the bass will kind of crank up and everything will sort of become sort of like resplendent with light, and then it'll sort of die back down. So that's just some of the thinking. And also there's a mirror effect, so just kind of creating this sort of weird trippy symmetry like this, for example, you know. Honestly, all fairly straightforward. You know, it's lots and lots of different moving parts that in and of themselves not necessarily that complicated. It's more about just kind of making the aesthetic choices, making it work with the music, etc. You know?
And if once you stick it all in a dark room, and we had how many projectors? Six projectors, and
2 on the floor.
Serious projectors, very bright projectors, high definition projectors. Once you encase all of that in a room, you can control all of these variables to a very high degree. And like I said, we had nothing but logistical problems and technical problems through the whole thing. I mean, I could go into detail, but I mean, suffice it to say that at one point we were using a Hoover to suck water out from under the floor before the place opened in the morning, you know. So, you know, and that's the nature of doing any type of festival. You have to just go with whatever is presented to you. But once you employ this technology inside, once you contain that space, it's remarkable what you can do with it.
Mhm.
You know, as Conor said, just using what are essentially simple tools in TouchDesigner to achieve this.
Yeah.
You know.
This is another example of the notes moving the positions. Is choosing different kind of how far away is the camera basically every time the note changes, it turns it. I'm going to show you guys this one because it's actually 3 different angles of the same thing layered over each other, and then there's something called a noise threshold. So just you're going to notice some of these tree scenes have this weird sort of bending, stretching effect. So without getting too much into the weeds, I'll kind of briefly show why it's
we are
that.
well in the weeds.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, fair, yeah. So it's a little peek. That is one of these bad boy. I think it's this. So you see here there are render networks. Won't get too too tedious here, you know. But one
we make the sausage.
Yes, yeah. So this is the point cloud file of just this scene. I think this is Barna.
That's the hill in Barna. So we took this footage as well. This was taken before the storm. So I was out there for the first time about a week ago since the place was leveled, and we inadvertently have created a historical footprint.
Yeah.
It's a very different place now.
Yeah.
It's about 80%, I'd say, 70%.
Yeah, it's rough.
Like the big ones are all knocked.
Yeah. Went to Kong as well. Kong was flattened, you know.
Kong was flattened.
Yeah.
In fact, if you want to feel like a toddler again, take a walk in Kong. You're doing nothing except climbing over these huge trees.
Yeah.
Trunks that cross the path. Remarkable.
So again, you know, like obviously if anybody gets questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I think maybe I'll, you know, bore the hell out of everybody too much. But this is a threshold, so it's just kind of a line traveling back and forth, and there is a noise here, which just basically means it applies a noise algorithm. That's what's exploding things, to use again the technical term. So if we mess with this, look, as you can see, it kind of explodes. So instead of having this explode all as one piece, we're just having kind of a filter where it's stretching it out. So that was just another aesthetic choice seen in a lot of these assets. I think that's, I don't think we need to get too much into what all this spaghetti is doing, really, you know. Again, obviously, feel free to ask now or at the end if there are any particular questions. If not, we'll continue moving to the right over here. Spaceman camera network, and then post processing. Yeah, very quickly, this particle. So this is the white stuff that I mentioned. Now, this was live generated, and then just again, because the computer was very angry with us, we just bounced it to footage. This is a piece of video. All of these nodes are making this particle system. If you look up particle system TouchDesigner, they're fairly straightforward, and there's a million different ways to do them. And as I said, this is just one piece of maybe 3-minute looping video that's moving around. So I would say it's probably the only static element of the entire piece, which was actually kind of nice to have one bit of consistent kind of grounding element, whereas everything else is kind of shifting around. I think that's nearly the end of the network. Let's do a peek. There are some, sorry, this is a huge part of it, and kind of a pain at times. So obviously we have one or two rather images. We have the wall, and then we have the floor. So how do we split that into, you know, different projectors? I guess it wasn't that complicated. It's a lot of fiddling. So we're just cropping them, little crop tops. These are called top operators, so that's a top. Yeah, so I should clarify that, you know. So we're just cropping them by percentiles basically, and sending them to different projectors, and then using TouchDesigner's built-in projection mapping tools. Now, some people prefer to use. It is a nightmare. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to be nice about it, but it was. It's complicated, you know. Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah. Now, some TouchDesigner users prefer to use a third-party software like Design and stuff, that kind of thing, or MadMapper, exactly. You know, I am happy enough to use the one in TouchDesigner. Like, it's not that it can't do it. I also think using another piece of software when you have such a huge project file is just more CPU load, and it could be prone to crashing. But anybody interested in projection mapping, which is just like splitting images to different projectors and sometimes stretching the corners, and if you haven't, you're going to need to overlap two images at the corner of the wall and then kind of fade them in so that they're kind of seamless. Not that it's that difficult, but the TouchDesigner mapping tools arguably have fewer features than maybe something like MadMapper would, which is just kind of purpose-built for that reason. TouchDesigner is like a real Swiss Army knife times 10, so it does have these tools. Again, as I say, just maybe they're slightly more rudimentary than you might find with MadMapper. I found they did the job after hours of tinkering. Yeah, hours and hours. Again, hours and hours of standing in different rooms and yelling like, okay, more to the left, 2 inches down. So yeah, it took a little while. Again, there's no need to get into the actual mapping tops, but they are all in this all in this section here, So just a case of getting the image, splitting it. You can do that by pixel, or you can do it just by a percentage of the image, and then stretch them out at the corners. They're going to overlap at the corner of the room here, where there are seams, also a seam in the middle of the floor. In TouchDesigner, then you can just kind of essentially program a shadow to fade out and then just stretch the images over so that they're one big seamless.
Feather them into place, yeah.
And as John said, get that kind of parallax effect going. I think that is kind of the height and breadth of the network. That's the previs. This is the back wall only. Again, there's no point in stretching out the whole image on the one screen. So that's what people were seeing. This is the previs. This is the leaf network. I think that's the little tour of the network. I'm going to check my notes, but if there are any questions, do feel free to shout. Otherwise, I think might have. Yeah.
I'm curious because the visual and audio both are really good. So I'm really curious how the audio influences the visual, because I saw there's amplitude. Maybe there's something other like pitch.
So you mean, how does it influence it within the network?
Yeah, so within the whole mechanism.
Okay, yeah.
Interact with each other.
Yeah. Good question. Yep. So this is the audio envelope here. That just means the software is reading the amplitude, or like how loud it is basically. So this is the if I remember correctly, just the low frequency in John's music. As we said, so this is just TouchDesigner has a built-in tool. Now, if you're using a different type of audio software, you could still use OSC to do this. This is a little bit easier. So we're just taking this directly from Bitwig, from John's music. As you can see, so it's just a value at this time. It's kind of going from 0.3 to 0.4, but any number will do. This is and this, so we're taking that value, we're putting it through a math chop, which is a channel operator. We're doing some maths. No, we're not. Never mind. Oh no, we are. Yeah. So it's adding a 2. Sorry, again, maybe too much in the weeds. So we're getting this value. I wanted the brightness of this tree,
which is the bloom,
to not be from like totally 0, like dark. So what we've done here is added. It's always at 2, basically. That's what this is saying. The brightness is always at 2, plus additionally whatever the value of John's bass music is. So then this is just being sent right here. Let's maybe just take this off just as one little example. So we'll remove this. Put that at 0. So right here, this is the sum total of this number here and then the bass frequency. So we can just click this little viewer active button here and then drag that value into the bloom intensity. So bloom is a top operator, which is like a texture operator. Just means kind of the visual stuff that's not being live generated, just a video kind of. So chop reference, and now we have that value. This is just basically manipulating the brightness. You can see now that it's just kind of, it's kind of glowing basically in time with the music. Another example would be, I think again, it was this one. Oh, no, it's the red one. This guy. And was this one? Yeah. So the notes from the sequencers. John has like a number of sequencers that are feeding different musical note values into the software. We're taking those notes and changing the camera angle. So it's happening to different degrees in every network. This is maybe the most busy looking one. So let's go with this. So it looks kind of complicated. It's not really, it's just, and also, this is I haven't seen this technique being used online. There may be other ways to do this. This is just the way that kind of made sense to me to make this happen. So we have a switch here. Obviously, this is just kind of choosing at random, or choosing in order each of these values. So what this is, each of these numbers is just the angle of the camera. So we have a render network here. Render network. So this is the point cloud of the tree is over here. Let's turn all of these on for a second. Okay, so whenever you're rendering something in TouchDesigner, you're going to have the 3D model asset, that's the tree. It's going into this geometry component, which just means we're going to make this model appear on screen. You've got a light here, and then you have a camera, which I've for some reason put all the way up there. This camera is looking at these 2 points in space, cam target and cam mover. So this, again, looks kind of complicated, but really, so what we have is we have this piece of a 3D model. The camera is looking at this cam mover null, and this thing here that the camera is looking at is being moved around, and the numbers that are moving it are here. So I just chose all of these numbers manually, just based on how they looked. And here we have the notes. So this is back to Bitwig. This is the music. So every time the note changes in John's music, there's just a different value. So let's say 6, for example, that's going to be read here at this switch. So this is now number 8. So that's choosing the number that we have here in 8. So this piece of musical material, this musical note, is telling this switch operator to choose a different camera angle. And then that's being fed into this guy, which is changing the position of the camera over here. So again, sounds kind of complicated. It's more just sort of, okay, good, thanks. Thank you. But does this make any sense at all? Yeah, so again, it's, also it's, worth noting, I think, with few exceptions, I didn't write any code, nor is that my wheelhouse at all. There are some Python code expressions here. TouchDesigner is usually called a visual programming language. So this is, again, rudimentarily, this is programming, in the sense that you're just telling this interface how to behave, but it's all just drag and drop operators. So if you, press tab, let's say we wanted another switch, you just choose a switch from here. All of these operators are just, you choose them from a menu. I think at the end, if it's not too dull, we're going to do a demonstration of creating a render network and just how, and then making it move around. But I would highlight, like, there's a lot to be learned, but it's not as complicated maybe as it might seem. You need to learn what all of these things do, but they are all kind of bespoke operators. As we said, one of these operators changes the brightness. One of them switches between this number and that number. And like you mentioned really, Lego earlier,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's real Lego. It's programming but visual. You have to tell it every single thing that you want it to do, but the components and the tools are there that enable you to do that.
Yeah. So the limit is really your imagination, rather than maybe necessarily needing to be an expert coder, for example. Obviously that's the purpose of the software, to kind of have a fairly easy to use interface.
Everybody can get this.
Yeah.
Like the free version just limits there's a couple of different output restrictions on it, but by and large, everything that's available on the pro version is available on this as a learning tool. Anyway, it's perfect.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so you could just get this and Bitwig for free, and just like for a free trial of Bitwig, the free version of TouchDesigner, and just start experimenting. You could also get your phone, take 40 photographs of this cup if you really like it, and then
you will not have a life.
No, yeah,
you won't have a life.
Yeah.
That's the
that goes without saying,
many nights run into days, but yeah, it's a great payoff. And a great feeling of satisfaction, I think, as well.
maybe get into the camera a little bit. That's by and large the bulk of the network. We might maybe take questions after the camera thing, and then I think we'll just render, give an example of a render network, Yeah. So the final piece that we had that we kind of skimmed over, I guess, although it's actually pretty powerful, is these cameras. Obviously, we just have one, whereas we had 5 or 6.
Yeah, 5.
5. Yeah.
We had 6 in it originally, but
and it didn't pay us.
Yeah,
and it was overkill as well. You know what I mean? Like we had the whole floor and the walls covered. That was the thing. We had big notions of like everyone walks in, everyone moves the trees around. And you can't do that if you want to have just like a complete, sort of
cacophony,
psytrance kind of, insane, gabber music-esque kind of nightmare on your hands, where everything is moving with, like it's overly modulated basically. So we stripped it down, had fewer inputs, and had it move more gently. I think so. Yeah, sorry. So the camera here, you can also like render this. So you've seen that these 3 assets are point clouds. You can also use these cameras to render a point cloud. I think we can probably demonstrate that now. Which also is quite a nice effect. I have no idea what this is going to look like because it's going to be, yeah. And then after that, yeah, maybe we will just give an example of like from scratch, maybe take about 5 minutes from scratch making, animating a 3D asset. So let's go in here. Okay. So if you take TouchDesigner has a lot of nested networks, so you don't want all of these things on the screen. It's completely impossible to navigate. So obviously they're all in these little boxes. You can see that we're kind of connecting things with these threads. Basically, each of these is a node. They can be connected. If you don't want to do that and you don't want to have a huge amount of spaghetti on the screen, you can just select by typing in the name of an operator. You can select anything that is anywhere else in the network. So back wall cam, I think is the name of this. So that's the point cloud model of this camera. And that should, although I have no idea now what it's going to do when it's maybe nothing. I think probably the camera angle is too mental, I think, to, I think it's probably just too zoomed in. Okay, let's do an example of the tree that I have prepared instead of just like messing around with the with the cameras.
Here's one I baked earlier.
Yes, but it is worth noting that as well as taking sensor movement from like hands and legs and people walking around, you can actually render a 3D model with these cameras as well. This is being read here as a Connect Azure camera, so that's probably the most common type of camera to use. Connect Azure. We're actually using an Orbeck Femto Bolt camera, which is essentially a hardware clone of that camera. Yeah. If I remember correctly, they're a little bit cheaper and they're certainly easier to find. I think the Azure is no longer in production, so that would be the most common way to get this kind of sensor input. You could also use a LiDAR scanner, and you could also use something called, it's just machine learning. The name of which escapes me, there's an AI kind of alternative to doing this, to having like a kind of a laser camera that's baked into TouchDesigner. It's a little bit jankier, it's kind of slower, it might not be as responsive, it would be more resource intensive, but you don't necessarily need to have this kind of camera again if you want to experiment with just sort of moving around. There are kind of machine learning programs that you can use that live in TouchDesigner that you can kind of use to manipulate things with, for example, the movement of your hands. Okay, so very quickly, we will just render a tree, I guess, and then we will maybe go to Q&A. So again, a good practice is to not just start putting a lot of stuff everywhere all over the screen where we're going to lose it. We will make our own little box here. Okay, so I'm going to get a point file in. So this is the point where the point clouds tend to live. I'm going to go to 3 assets and get a tree. This guy. So you can see there's no information being read. If we go here, what a point cloud is doing is taking color information and rendering it on a physical plane. There is neither time nor perhaps the personal knowledge to really get into what that means, but it is essentially a way of representing an image on an XYZ axis. So all color values in TouchDesigner or just digitally in general, like the RBG, the red, green, blue color palette on a computer has a range from 0 to 255, so the different values. So if you get an image or a point cloud like this, it can have that color data. It can say this is the image, these are the colors for that image, but each pixel also has a fixed point in space. It's a little bit to get your head around, but what it means is that we can render then an image as a 3D model. That's essentially how that works. Worth looking into more probably from somebody who is more up to speed, but that's the rough idea. So that's the point file in. And what I've done here is, so XYZ, now we're getting the spatial coordinates for this tree. We also need the color coordinates. Well, we don't need them, but it might be nice to have. So we're going to get a point file select and select it here. As I said, there's a range of 255 in the kind of the way that a computer looks at colors. So we're going to divide this by 255 and get the color info. And then both of these, this is called a null, and there's a very good practice in TouchDesigner. Everything should always end with a null, so you can put kind of things in the middle here without breaking everything that you've done, basically, Now we may need to maybe experiment with different point clouds, but this network is just an example of how this whole thing works. So we're going into, what we just did there was a point file in, that's a texture operator. That means that we're dealing with images. Over here, we're going to deal with a surface operator. This is physical 3D rendering. So we're adding a point. We're going to convert that point to particles. So this is, I know this might be a little complex, but you can kind of see that it's fairly, add to convert. Like it becomes intuitive when you know how these networks are built. So I'm going to go here, add a point, convert the particle to convert the point to a particle, render as point sprites over here. And then this is going to go into what we discussed earlier, the geo. So this is just visualizing the object. This process of creating a 3D shape is called instancing. So we're going to turn instancing on. This is going to tell the geo where our spatial coordinates are. So we're going to go red, green, blue. Now you can see that we already have a little guy up here. That's the tree. Yep.
If somebody asking, would you mind turning off the music?
Oh yeah, can do. Yep.
They're trying to distract you.
Sure.
Trying to follow the.
100%. Yep.
Go to mix and just mute.
Mix.
As in X out of over this guy. Yeah, X out of that.
That's done.
There you go.
Yep. Okie dokie. So the audio is working on the Zoom. Nice. Excellent. Hello, everybody on Zoom. Yeah, technology. So that's the spatial coordinates. Here are the colors. This work. Oh, that's the wrong place. This is the colors. Works basically the same way. Colors: red, green, blue. And then we are going to get a light and a camera. So this is every TouchDesigner render network works the same way. You need a light. You're basically simulating how this would work, if you're actually trying to film something, basically. So needs a light, needs a camera, and needs a render top. We're going to see how the colors come out nice from this. If not, we have a million point clouds to choose from. So we're going to put this on screen. And maybe first of all, wiggle it around a little bit. Let's see if we can just get the camera, move this around. Sit there, we'll go with that for now. Now, so X, Y, Z, this would be the colors. So we're going to go red, green, and blue. And then maybe we're going to make this look slightly less insane. Yeah. So this is the camera. These are the so you can move the camera angles a number of ways. You can just do it directly in the camera operator. So this is the Z-axis, is the zoom. I'm just dragging it like this. It will rotate it a little bit. And then we are going to increase the brightness, and you'll see that it is in fact kind of colored in fairly nicely. I'm happy enough for it to just be upside down for the time being. So, yeah, it was it was already fairly abstracted to begin with. So let's go with a noise. The bloom top that we spoke about earlier, or you could actually just get a level. This is the level of, for example, contrast or brightness. So let's say if the brightness was 7, now we can see that we have, just a woodland scene. As we said earlier, you could get a noise top in here. Now it's exploding, which is always fun. You could get an LFO. This is a low frequency oscillator. These are really handy in TouchDesigner. It's just a signal moving up and down. So it's a way of quickly animating something. Just to kind of test out how it looks when it's animated. And then if you want, you can maybe feed in the sensor from the input from the camera or whatever's handy. This is, again, probably too much in the weeds here, but this is going from -1 to 1. So we're just going to change that to go from 0 to 1 with a math chop operator, channel operator. We're going to pop that into the noise. And we'll start animating the this explosive effect. So now we have that that effect that you've seen. This is obviously a pretty extreme example. Turn this down a little bit. So that's essentially how it worked. Obviously, then you can just replace this value with anything that you like. You can have it with the music. You can have it with the
camera interaction.
You can have it with somebody walking around.
Experience field,
You could take data from a spreadsheet if you really love spreadsheets and put it in there. You can take data from any kind of API, from any kind of other software that's online. Any kind of data at all you can use to manipulate different aspects of TouchDesigner, basically. So I think that kind of covers the network. Maybe we can open it up to questions if anybody has any. I'll park myself over here.
Park yourself.
So I'm on little buddy.
Yeah. Go back to the floor.
Yes.
I can understand were you using fluid simulation?
Yeah, I'm using a fluid simulation. Now this is largely a piece of GLSL coding that was actually made by David Simon. It's a component that he has online.
Mm-hmm.
So let's check it out. It's been modified, but not really that much. It's this kind of underlying rusty layer is GLSL coding. I think we've actually had this in 2 different places. Really, all I've changed here is it was initially built to receive the XY input of a mouse moving around, and I just changed that to receive sensor input. But let's see, I think it actually, I parked it in here, maybe did I? Where is the floor?
You're starting to see now some of the practical implications of using TouchDesigner for a large scale network.
Yeah. Where is anything?
Where do I have my keys?
Yes. What year is it? It surely must be in here. So let's have a look. Instancing network. Yeah. So let's have a look. There's just this. Yeah. So here he has the code for the entire thing. So I drag this out. So GLSL is a shader programming language, pretty dense, even for to my knowledge, for people who themselves are maybe fluent in other programming languages. It's just a very concise, curt language where everything is quite densely put together, and you're talking directly to the GPU. I found it quite, I've very, very rudimentary understanding of it, but I found it quite complex. Here's the fluid sim, I think. Yeah. So it looks, so it's taking a circle shape, moving it over the floor and displacing the liquid on the floor. And that circle is connected to the movement of somebody walking in front of the camera, or rather walking under the camera.
To the head.
Yeah. I still feel like there was more liquid goo to be seen somewhere. Let's track this down. Okay. Retrace our movements. This is, I think, the displace. That's just the people moving in front of the camera. even is this? It's this with just visual effects that I put over it. So this is the kind of to my knowledge, the liquid simulator itself. You can get, so this is again a shader. There is a website called Shader Toy, where there are a lot of free shaders like this, and a shader is essentially I would describe it as an animated piece of code that shows a 2D animation rather than a 3D animation. They're not natively compatible with TouchDesigner, but if you learn the basic syntax of GLSL, you can kind of swap out you can basically rewrite it that isn't as hard as it sounds. So just kind of make it compatible with this, which is what I've done here, I think. So you can kind of import shaders that look like fire or water or fluid or really anything, and use them as just as some kind of like layer or component in your piece.
I think they just integrated called Flow.
Yes, with the pop.
That does the same.
Okay, cool. I've not.
Super reduced.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, like it's less intensive on the.
Well, it's still intense.
Okay.
Fluidity.
Okay. Yeah.
Simulation, but it's very
cool. Is this in the experimental? The new. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm just have a look. Yeah.
They just released the 2025.
Cool. Yeah. There's quite a few new operators like the pops and stuff that I've tinkered with a little bit. Yeah. Yes. John has also gotten stuck into TouchDesigner and has been showing me very, very cool pop operator network. So we're going to be doubling down on this now soon. That was possibly a bit waffly, but I hope that's more or less the floor. It's GLSL code put in different places being composited to make this kind of oil slick effect. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. No worries. Any other questions?
Just, I don't know if you can tell me, but you're both talking about the amount of hours obviously that you put into it. Like the overall budget for this, I'm sure it's like a joke compared to the amount of work that went into it. But if you were to
labor of love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in terms of like repeating this in an education and youth context, because I can see that it's really relevant to young people, especially sensory needs. Like what kind of a budget are you looking at?
It depends. If you're looking to achieve the same 360-degree total immersion in the room, then it gets dear. But if you're looking to create, let's say, a sensory room with one interactive wall or maybe one interactive floor, off-the-shelf Harvey Norman projectors will do the job. Computer speakers will do the job. We're using this little webcams will do the job. We over-engineered our thing just to make it look as high spec as possible, and we were lucky enough that we had a budget that we could spend on it. But I think it's really easy to actually the bulk of the time, the bulk of the work is in learning how to incorporate and run the audio and the video tech together, just getting them working kind of fluidly. But in terms of the experiential impact that it has, it's really easy to create that. You can literally create it in your house. If you have a room that you can block the light out of and you have access to a projector and a couple of speakers, you can create this in your home with a laptop.
Then sorry, just to add to that, then if you were to recreate it, obviously for the experience, but then recreate it with young people. Because a lot of the young people we work with are really good at Blender.
Perfect.
Just really into this kind of software anyway. Is there, is this kind of, are you talking about Bitwig and TouchDesigner as an introductory software? Or they're kind of simpler versions of these?
I think it's, just to answer, like my experience of it now, I've taught software to people before. And if you're starting a new suite of software, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're trying to, let's say, if you're going to learn Photoshop, or GIMP or one of these alternatives, if you don't have any prior knowledge, the learning curve is the same. So if you have either a latent interest in it yourself or an enthusiastic teacher and willing students, all of these things, as difficult as this thing looks like the cockpit of a 747, but the simple fact is, you could put an audio device in and an audio device out and have something to play your MP3s on it. Super simple, and it's the same with Bitwig. Bitwig is a plug and play. Once you have a microphone plugged in, you detect the sound card, boom, hit record, and you're working straight away.
Because a lot of them are using Ableton already.
Yeah, if people use Ableton, they'll be able to use Bitwig. And to be honest, if they're already using Ableton, there probably isn't a reason, unless you wanted to utilize the polygrid instrument, which doesn't exist in Ableton. You could probably just use Ableton to do this, because you can create a rudimentary DAW interface, input interface, using Ableton as well.
Figuring out leave it alone.
What's the matter with you? You cannot leave it alone. It's nearly a year after we This is what he was doing, guys, when when the whole thing was running. We'd get it just running in the morning, and he'd go, I'm just going to do this. No, don't touch it. But yeah, we had a couple of people ask us if it was recreatable, just specifically for people who have sensory kind of needs, because yeah, we got hugely positive responses from people that had those needs. You know, and all of this stuff is controllable in terms of light intensity, volume. You can actually exercise control over all of those parameters. So it would be, I mean, I think everyone should have one in their house. I think David agrees with me.
You're available to fit them in.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, you see. I mean, part of the journey, David, is the doing. You know, the learning and the doing, and it's not difficult.
Can I ask a question? When you went out scanning trees originally, what sort of vision did you have for the final project, and how did it change over the many hours you spent working with software to realize it?
Yeah, it kind of looks like how I was hoping it would look. You know, yeah. I mean, there's more elements and layers. But I was familiar with point clouds already, and that kind of drifting, ethereal, spore-like kind of representation of trees is more or less that was the vision. You know, I would say, yeah, you know, I would just say that there are more elements than we had in mind. Like let's say this kind of particle system here that's, you know, coming into view. Initially, yeah, I had imagined people kind of manipulating trees. So I guess pretty short answer, yeah, you know, like just stuff like this, and the liquid in the floor hadn't yet been planned, but the broad idea, do you know what, I guess I would also say that all of the kind of symmetrical mirroring came through experimentation, you know. Also, as I said earlier, you know, like the speed and pace and tone of the whole thing was going to be quite different until I heard the music, you know. I would say faster kind of, and just kind of more
No, I hadn't seen the visuals before I started to put the music together. I just had a sense of I struggle myself if I'm in a busy, like for example, I can't watch the Avengers in the cinema. It's too much going on. You know, it shuts my brain down. It's just boom bam. There's so many flashes. It just completely shuts down all of my brain. So I had my own kind of take was that whatever we would achieve inside in this room, that the starting point would be from a relaxation perspective. You just want to be able to get in. You know, the world is frantic enough.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that was the marriage then, you know, when those two elements came together. Yeah, just very naturally kind of.
Yeah. Like,
just related to that, there's a really long compliment in and I'll just read the start of it. It was my favorite exhibition at the Arts Festival over the last 10 years.
Wow.
I traveled to Galway as often as I could to spend time in the space, and I'll let you read the
that's lovely.
there, but it's,
thank you.
It's very much related to the effect the space and the visuals and the combination of sound and visuals had on our online viewers. So
yeah, okay.
Thank you, online viewer. Thanks.
Is it still on?
No. It was 2 weeks, and to be honest, I mean, I think it was a journey of fire for the guys who run the arts festival as well. You know, the Printworks. I have read recently in some newspaper that they're designating funds now to turn it into a kind of a permanent market and art installation place, but it was a leaky ship while we were over there. So our guys were in and out all the time, you know, with scissor lifts and mops and drills and putting floors down and taking things up, and
industrial HVACs and
and we had to rejig the whole power. We had to run 3-phase electricity into this thing, and the input for all of the power was, if I had to guesstimate it, 5 meters away from where the roof leak, which kind of looked like the Corrib in full flow, was coming down and pouring into wheelie bins that then had to be hosed out and anything that got splashed out went under our floor. So we had to put in dehumidifiers and then take in. This is all at 12 o'clock at night before the whole thing opens. So we're back in there early in the morning. In the meantime, that room was built inside of the main exhibition hall. So all of the paintings had to be taken down, covered in plastic, packed away. Mops came out in the morning. It's a whole operation.
Several
So
days, yeah.
you know, like there, we are kind of think there's a place in Dublin that's kind of permanent science museums outside of them. So something like this would be perfect for a long-term installation, you know. But you need a place. Unfortunately, Galway doesn't have. If you're a local.
What about put a VR app?
I mean, I guess you can.
You can actually, like, there is an integration with the Oculus Rift in TouchDesigner, so you could just actually change the setting of that camera, that render network, to mimic the size of the lens in the Oculus Rift, and then use the Oculus Rift.
You wander around.
So yeah, you could just walk around this room if you wanted to in VR.
Do you not think though that there is, you know, I mean, we did, I think a year ago here, we were working with VR, David and crew, and you know, like virtual reality is cool, but it's disconnected, you know, and we already are immersed in.
Just for meditation.
Meditation. Yeah.
The sound would be great, and just sitting there and just.
Yeah. I listen. You're not wrong. I spent many hours sat in the back, just going, "Oh my god, yeah, this would be great."
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we get, essentially like what Conor has in the previs there. That's what you would regenerate inside in the VR world, and I mean, it's absolutely doable.
Yeah.
You just wander around inside of the parameters of that space, and you see it and experience it. You know.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there was already kind of not a compromise, but we were kind of conscious of taking something, you know, trying to comment on something natural and ecological and doing it digitally, you know, so that's already a bit of an odd, like a tough pill to swallow. So we wanted it to be beyond that, as kind of interactive physically as possible, you know, because there's something to be said for doing it, and there's something, I guess, maybe to be said against it, but, you know, in some ways by digitizing trees, I think with the intention that, you know, with the intention set here, that it was, yes, sincerely intended and intended as something beautiful and with connectivity to nature in mind.
Yeah.
But further kind of extrapolating it into VR. Although I mean, it could be
look, it would absolutely work. But
Yeah.
Personally, I'm just not a fan of VR. VR just removes me.
People who missed it. Like,
Yeah.
Right. And
you want listen, come up with that. We'll give you a USB.
Yeah. It would work. It would work, definitely, and it wouldn't be too hard to implement. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, we may do it, and when I say we, of course, I mean Conor. I'm not going to do it, but we many people, you know, like it's certainly an installation that would work. You could run that year round. I mean, there's no specific. It's not Galway Arts Festival, you know, oriented in any specific way, and every space can benefit from having a little chill out room, you know. And I mean, it's nice if you have something nice to listen to and some cool visuals to watch in the meantime, you know. But in Galway, you have to be very careful, because a room like that would become very popular with a very certain kind of person. That's all I'm going to say about it. Where are we?
Yeah.
But we may.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to kind of get this feedback even from yourself now. You know, it feels like a million years ago that we did all of this, but it's nice. I like watching it again. You know, I'm reminded of the peace I felt in the midst of all of this thing. So, yeah, maybe you've planted a seed, brother.
Yeah.
Was the physical process much longer, obviously, than the digital?
Yeah.
You out in the field?
Yeah, absolutely.
What, like a couple of months?
We spent the better part of a year between planning and then going out into the field. But a lot of it, as well as kind of testing and research and seeing what will work. As I said, he who shall not be named, on our first outing, crashed the drone, you know, and McGuinness here had to go in his naked bare legs through what can only be described as razor wire to get it, because we didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
You didn't see where you fucking locked it. You know, I mean, it was just a whole palaver, but it's kind of like, you know,
stuff that's going to happen.
It is going to happen, and it's, you know, like the part of the payoff with the final production is the fact that we wrestled this from the jaws of defeat on many different occasions, you know, and even while it was running, as I said, the weather tried to destroy us.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's all part of it, you know, it's all part of it. And it is an interesting way to go out into the world. And you start to see, I guess, as well, because you're talking about the ash dieback, my grand uncle used to make hurls down in a place called Ardrahan, and they, as I'm sure you know, are made from the ash tree. So Milo is dead now for a few years, but he has a shed filled with pre-ash dieback ash, which is like Brazilian rosewood to hurlers, you know, people who make hurls. So it's just an interesting way to be reminded. We live in a very fast-paced world, so it's an interesting thing to be reminded of, you know.
Yeah. Worth pointing out too, and it kind of harkens back to David's question a little bit, that like there's only definitely the bulk of the work was outdoors, you know, and in planning, and then the nature of doing an exhibition like this, you know, set for a specific space when the gear is being rented. We actually had the huge benefit of being able to test it here in CCT. Was tested a lot in my kitchen, you know. There's only so much you can do with the sensors until you're in the actual room where you're going to be using the equipment. So there was a lot of last minute changes actually being made just in terms of the sensor calibration. How far away are you moving your hand is changing something too much or too little, or the camera is pointed the wrong way. So there was actually a lot of, not really change of the vision, but there was a lot of tinkering to be done within 5 days of setup.
I mean, honestly, we were tinkering through the whole thing.
Fact, yeah, 100%. Yeah, big time. Yeah, making changes. Yeah, sometimes collaboratively, sometimes I'll be secretly little tippy tapping on the keyboard.
I spent a good 10 minutes finding and erecting an umbrella on a hat stand over the computer's control panel while it was inside during a particularly savage downpour. So like, you know, we could romanticize it and say that we spent all of our time artistically, but a lot of it was MacGyvering. Yeah, messing with the sensors. We were there kind of 15 hours a day sometimes, just because there's a lot to be monitored and changed. We need to see, sometimes the invigilators would elect a different number of people to be on the floor, so then we need to change things. So there's a lot of babysitting to be done when you're using like a lot of different sensors and a lot of equipment, you know, quite, you know, in some ways kind of envious of other media where someone has like made a really beautiful painting and it's just on the wall and it's finished, you know. Walk away.
Yes, we're just kind of just getting started when we were setting up. So yeah.
Were you learning the tools as you went?
I did learn. There was a lot of things I didn't know that I learned as I was doing it. Yeah, I had a much rougher understanding than I do now. Definitely, yeah.
But that's if you are, in my experience anyway, personally, I learn best when the house is on fire. You know, it's just the way my learning process works. So I need to have something to be focused on, something to be working towards, and there needs to be a risk factor, you know, in order for me
to feel alive.
Yeah. Sphincter tight.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Hi. How are you doing?
So I have a question and potentially planting another seed. But you said that you captured footage in Barna Woods before Storm AON, and it's like almost like a historical record.
Yeah.
Do you have enough footage to kind of recreate what it looked like before?
Yes, I think so.
I mean,
not the whole woods, you know. Yeah,
but definitely parts that are gone now.
Yeah. I do have a lot of tree models that don't exist in real life anymore. Yeah. That was sort of it's funny. The idea of this in a kind of a grim way was like, this is a digital archive of trees that are dying. They just died much faster than we expected because the Galway woods got flattened. It was, like John said, 80% of not just ash, all trees in that forest were knocked down. So the long-term view was to have a digital archive. I intend on making these tree models available for free online on our website, you know. But yeah, just the doomsday event for at least Galway the West kind of came sooner than expected, you know. I'm also reminded that I have a video here. Can I show the video of the dancers? Because Michelle is an excellent performing dancer. Again, you know, me and my notes.
Yet another kind of a sparked inspirational moment.
Yeah,
you know, where you came down, did your thing.
Yeah, I knew I was missing something. I'm sad. Can I get this tab out of the way? So again, you know, like we were very happy with how it all worked and how it looked with a big crowd, but it really, I think, shone differently when there were, one, like professional body workers, you know, so interpretive dancers, and two, fewer people in the space where more often than not, one person is interacting with one sensor at a time, so it's more deliberate, you know. There's like, alternatively, when you have like 15 people on the floor, and you explain to them, you know, if everyone starts moving their hands at different times, nothing's going to happen or something crazy is going to happen. But if you all work together, you can mindfully have an impact. And it's obviously kind of, you know, aligned with the ideology behind the piece in general and preservation of the woodlands. But that's all well and good. But sometimes you just want to see people, you know, beautifully moving and actually moving it on purpose. So Oh, great.
It was actually an unexpected error.
Yeah.
Genuinely surprised by that.
Yeah.
The gate as well.
Yes, yeah. Conor, John scanned that out.
Yeah, when we went down to Cong, you know Cong Woods? Have you been to Cong Woods? It's a beautiful river, and you walk across, and then there's this gate that has the carving of a face over the apex of the gate.
Sorry, is it in village itself, or is it out in the cast?
It's between the abbey, and as you walk into the forest, you got to cross over the bridge.
Yeah.
So it's the entrance on the far side of the river.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about the dancing was that we didn't explain how it worked. We were like, yeah, you can go in there and you can kind of move around, and your movements will in some way change it. So as I said, it was actually we settled on just having the left hand of one person per camera impacting the piece. So it was just beautiful seeing people just kind of like yeah,
children as well.
Yeah, 100%. Children were the best at figuring it out, to be honest. Yeah. Often there would be a big queue, or not a queue, but like a throng of people not standing, afraid to stand on the floor, and not sure if they were allowed to stand on the floor, and then children would just run in and start like legging it around the place and spilling the liquid around, like displacing the liquid floor, and then everybody would follow their lead, you know. Yeah, that just came to my mind. I forgot to. I didn't intend to show the video. So yeah.
Where did you position your camera?
In the ceiling, so there were 5. We had 6, we just turned one off, but there were, let's say it was like this kind of size room. Yeah, they're all just kind of rigged into the ceiling, kind of more or less where the projectors were. 2 of them were pointing straight down for the floor, and then the other 3 were just kind of angled, I'd say like a 45-degree angle to just and they were, so usually if it's looking at somebody from behind, basically, you know, we did try lots of different angles. As I said, we were there for all hours during and after the setup, you know. Yeah. But yeah, we settled on having them kind of in the middle, kind of like some of them. I think all 3 of them were kind of like on one pole. They were fairly clustered in the middle, and they were pointing outwards to try and capture a wide angle of the walls from behind, and then one down at the ground.
So we had to get cables made.
Yeah.
To carry power and video. So these things are 20 meters long. So they all of the technology was nested in the center, directed by a guy called Tom, who owned all the hardware. But it was an absolute spider's nest.
Yeah.
You know, and then the temperature, if you recall, like it was a hot couple of weeks. So when, you know, it was okay downstairs down on the floor, but once you got into the scissor lift and you went up in there, and you're trying to tape something up, and he's roaring through a hole.
Yeah.
It's just like all the sheen. The projectors that keep going. Listen, I mean, I swear to God, I used to wake up at night when I'd hear the rain. And I mean, it would wake me.
Yeah.
And I'd be going, oh my God, I have to get up. I have to go in with it, you know, and just start shining a lamp up to see if we saw any dampness. I mean, projectors, I think, 5, 6?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
5. They're about 30 grand each.
Yeah.
You
know,
know,
they're wide angle. Even the lens, I think, is $4 grand a pop, just to
So they have these beautiful snorkel lens, periscope lens.
Yeah, yeah.
So the whole idea was that these very high powered projectors would only be a few meters away from the wall. We need to cover the entire. And if you have a projector at home, you know, the further back you go, the bigger the image. So we wanted to keep resolution, get the whole cover. So in order to do that, he had to install the projectors upside down and then put this periscope.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's crazy technology.
And the alternative would have been having maybe like 15 or 20 projectors and then cropping the image into 15 different pieces and like a jigsaw puzzle and putting it together and then edge blending them all.
And then
we
you have
run
to
the risk of
remember
seam and also outputs as well. So
each projector gives off what, maybe, you know, 50 joules of heat. Every person gives off 10.
Yeah.
So once you cram that room with people, 5 projectors running at the same time, you know, and then the projectors will shut down if it gets too hot.
Yeah. So the risk of failure was huge. Yeah.
You know, and we didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
You know, we had an inkling of it, but you just, like I said, building the plane while you're flying it, you know. It's the best way to do it.
100%, man.
I had a full head of hair.
Good. Thanks very much, lads.
Thank you, David. I'm clapping.